everybody, welcome to Circle of the Blind Mice, where we are low on vision but high on tech. Back again with another video, and today I bring you part 2 of my in-depth video comparison of iOS versus Android accessibility and which works best with your visual impairment. Back when I got my first smart device, the go-to platform for those of us who had any kind of disability was pretty much iOS. Now, a lot has changed since then. Google has really stepped up their game, and in the 3 years alone that I have been using Android, I have noticed quite a bit of improvement in the accessibility apps. Like iOS, Android comes with accessibility features for those of us with visual impairments, hearing impairments, and mobility and dexterity issues. It also comes with a number of convenient features such as direct access, answering and ending calls, single tap mode, and also the ability to import and export your accessibility settings. And if you have a custom launcher such as Nova Launcher, you have even further settings available to you. For the visually impaired accessibility options specifically, we have got switch access, which basically is a configurable keyboard shortcuts to control your device. There's TalkBack, Google's answer to VoiceOver. Dark screen, which turns your screen dark all the time while using TalkBack for privacy, not to mention it will save your battery life. Rapid key input, which allows you to tap keys just once while typing instead of having to do it twice, which is always super annoying. There is speak password, which is self-explanatory. There are 7 different font sizes that you can choose from. There are magnification gestures, there's hover zoom, so if you have a note with an S Pen, you can use hover zoom to hover over just part of the screen. There are notification reminders, which will beep at customized intervals to remind you that you've missed a notification. There are negative colors and color adjustments for those of you who are colorblind. There are accessibility shortcuts. And last but not least, there is text-to-speech options as well. So you can actually even customize the accent of the Google voice that is reading you your books or doing your talkback. For example, I have mine set to the British voice, and I'll just quickly give you an example of that.
Talkback on. Talkback is enabled. 1821. Double tap to select. Apps dock. Messages dock. Phone dock. Talkback is disabled.
So you get the idea. The first thing most Android users will tell you they love about Android is its complete and total customizability. Unlike iOS, where you're limited to an endless sea of icons and folders, Android uses a combination of widgets and third-party launchers to help users completely make the phone their own. Because of that, no two Android devices look the same. For example, with widgets, on my home screen, I have not one, but 2 clocks. I've got a digital clock and I have got an analog clock. So I don't have to turn off my device to check the time. I can just tap my home button and go right to my home screen so I can be on another screen. Tap my home button, takes me right back. I can see the time in large print. And if I tap on it, I get a large print world clock where I can see the time in different countries. I don't know if you've ever checked out that world clock in iOS, but I can't read it. Even on my iPad, which has a bigger screen than my Note 4, I cannot read their world clock. It's too small. Same point with the stocks widget. The font on the Android app is quite a bit larger than the font on the iOS counterpart. The first thing I suggest you do once you get an Android device is run to the Play Store, the Google Play Store, download an app called Nova Launcher. It is one of the most popular third-party launchers. It is available in both free version and paid version. I suggest eventually upgrading to the paid version, but download the free version first to see how you like it, and trust me, you will like it. It's had over 10 million downloads, and it's got a rating of 4.6 out of... Let me grab my magnifier here. It's got a rating of 4.6 out of 770,662 ratings. So it really is one of the top launchers, and I've used this launcher pretty much ever since I got my first Android device, and I cannot stress it enough. It opens up a whole bunch of accessibility options to you. For example, Android by itself allows you to have widgets, as I've already established. If you have Nova Launcher, you can actually take your widget, which I have since deleted from my screen. So let me just drag my widget over. Okay, so you can take your widget and resize it. So what I've got here is my analog clock. I am now enlarging the clock so that's taking up like about more than half of my screen. So that is one cool thing you can do, and I'll just show you the Shazam widget I have. I really love making Shazam really big because, you know, when you're trying to rush to Shazam that song before it ends, if you make it really big, it's easier for you to find. You don't have to fiddle with it. You just tap it and it goes, goes and does its thing, and it will start running the Shazam right away. So it is awesome for that. But that's not all that Nova Launcher allows you to do. It allows you to overlap your widgets. So if you want to place it just so, you're not constrained by the normal system grid. Now, without Nova Launcher, you cannot overlap your widgets, but with it, you absolutely can. So if I wanted to, I could put my analog clock over my digital clock. Why I would want to do that, I don't know, but I actually do have my widgets overlapping because I like to center it. So for example, I've got this analog clock overlapping my torch widget, and then I can send the clock to the back so it's layered, and that way when I'm tapping on my torch, the torch will actually turn on and not activate the clock. The next thing that Nova Launcher can do for you is allow you to change the size of your icons, the color of the text, and the size of the text. So for example, you can actually have your icons as much as 150% of the normal size. You can make them small. I'm trying to drag it here. You can make them small, you can make them big. Now, if you have labels turned on so that you have text labels below your icons, then you can only make the text or the icons rather 105%. Now with the text, you can make it really, really big, really, really small. So I'm just basically using a slider to slide the text back and forth and make it whatever size I like. Now, if the white text isn't working for you, you can go into the color settings. You can make the text yellow. You can make it green. And so on and so forth. So you can really, really, really make it your own. If you have trouble seeing reds, well, no problem. Or if you have trouble seeing whites, whatever the case, you can just totally customize that. Another thing that Nova Launcher does is if you install the plugin for unread counter badges, you can also customize the size of your unread badge, the color of this unread badge, and even the outline color. So I've got mine set as, instead of red with white, I've got mine set with purple and white, as you can see here on my badge. The next feature I love in Android is the read aloud feature in Google Play Books. In iBooks over on Apple's platform, when you get to the end of a page with voiceover on, it stops and you have to physically swipe to the next page. Not so with Google Play Books. Simply go into your book, enable the read aloud feature, and then once it gets to the end of the page, it will actually automatically turn the page. Now I'm actually going to demonstrate this for you, but just for copyright reasons, I'm going to blur the text and I'm going to turn the volume of the book way, way down. But here is how this works. So you get the idea. The next thing I love in Android is actually more to do with Samsung, and that would be Samsung's messaging app. Now I will say that Google's default messaging app is crap. Google Hangouts is awful. There's zero customizability. You can't even change the font size. So I absolutely hate that app. So don't even bother with that. But if you go with a third-party phone other than, say, rather than going and getting a Nexus, if you go with like a Samsung or an LG or a Sony, you're likely to get a messaging app specific to that phone manufacturer. So Samsung's messaging app, not only does it allow you to change the font size by pinching and zooming with your fingers, you can also use your volume key to change your size as well. In addition to that, you can also go into settings and then display to change the background of your text messaging. So if the black background just doesn't work for your particular visual impairment, you can change it to white. You can change it to like a yellowy color, a cream color, blue with white fluffy clouds, and you can even choose a picture. I don't suggest that one though, because if you're anything like me, your text bubbles are going to completely eclipse the picture, but it's there for you if you want it. Another thing you can do is change the style of your text bubble. Now there aren't a whole lot of styles available, but the point is at least you can do it. In iOS you can't. You're limited to the blue or green and white text bubbles that Apple gives you. Next on the pros list is the Google Calendar. Granted, the font is not overly huge, just like my similar complaint of the iOS calendar, but for some reason I find the text on this calendar a little bit more easier to read. Now, if you flip your device sideways, which I'll do right now, all of a sudden, on the top part of your screen, you get large print dates, which I can read beautifully. So if you're trying to find a certain date, you don't have to squint at your screen like with the iOS calendar. If you don't feel like turning voiceover, or in this case, TalkBack on, you can just flip your calendar on side like this and go into the events that way. Now granted, once you're in the event, the font isn't all that large. That's where voiceover or your magnifier or zoom feature or whatnot is going to come in. Now if you flip the calendar back to vertical and you tap on an event, it actually brings you a beautiful color-coded listing with large print dates that I personally can read, as well as little calendar events such as holidays and whatnot. The font isn't overly huge, but if you look closely, the font is bold, it's high contrast, and I can easily read these with the magnifier. So I just think that the layout of the Google Calendar takes better advantage of the screen and has better fonts that, even though they're small, they can easily be worked with, if you got zoom on or magnification and so on. The last benefit to Android, and this is actually probably one of the biggest ones, is the price. As I mentioned in part 1 of this comparison, iOS devices are hugely expensive. If you go with Android instead, you are going to save yourself anywhere from $300 to $500 on your device purchase, depending on how old the model of the phone is. Like whether you're going with the latest model or if you're going to go with a model that's 1 or 2 years old. And then of course it also depends on the size, the storage you get, etc., etc. But huge difference in price. And because of that, I don't know that I could ever go back to iPhone. Oops, there's one thing I forgot in the pros section for Android, and in particular Nova Launcher working with Android. When you have Nova Launcher, you can even customize the look of your folders. Now, one challenge I often have with iOS on my iPad, even though it has a larger screen, is when I have stuff in folders, they all look the same, like the folders all look the same to me. So it's hard for me to tell what folder is which. So in which case I have to turn on VoiceOver to hunt down a folder. With Android, I almost never have to do that because I can change the folder preview, meaning what the folder looks like when you're just simply looking at it. So for example, I have mine selected as stack. You can also have it like a grid, which is pretty much like what iOS has, although even the Android grid is better than iOS's, because with the Android and Nova Launcher screen grid, there are 4 icons displayed instead of, I believe iOS has 6 icons that are displayed. So again, it makes them smaller, harder to see. Again, they all look the same. But with a 4 icon grid, the icons are that much bigger that it just makes it a bit easier to see and recognize, okay, this is what that folder is. You can also have them spanned out as a fan, and you can also have them as a line. I like the option of the stack because what happens is the first app that is in your folder will show up then as the first app in the stack. So it shows up bigger and more recognizable. So for example, my music folder, I've got the TuneIn Radio app, I know right away as soon as I see that is my music folder. In my video folder, I've got the YouTube app. So again, right away, I know that that's my video folder, and you can see the other apps peeking behind it. But it's just, I don't know, it makes the folders more recognizable for me. And because you can easily, even as someone who's visually impaired and legally blind, I can still easily see the colors of that app that's in the forefront, thus identifying the folder in question. Another thing I love about Android is the fact that it takes better advantage of the larger screen, especially with Samsung devices. iOS, like I said in part 1 of this two-part comparison, iOS tends to make everything in the side menu is really small and just the stuff in the main menu is really big. With at least my Note 4, in the email app, the header of who sent the email is large. And then the email side, now by default, the email side, it shows here as being rather small because I've got it on side view. But I can zoom in on the email to make that larger. Now, of course, with iOS, you can pinch to zoom in your email and do that as well. But with the side menu as to who sent what, it's still quite small. And I just really wish that Apple would make that part larger. And I complained a lot about that in part 1, so I won't go on about it. But again, just wanted to show you how in Android, it's a better layout as far as that is concerned. That being said, there are a few downsides to Android. I know I sound like a total Android fangirl, but I do see both sides of the coin. Now, one of my big beefs with Android is TalkBack has some inconsistencies. It doesn't work as seamlessly as VoiceOver does, and that's why I suggest if you are totally blind, you may want to stick with Apple. But if you are the type of person who can flip, sorry, I'm knocking stuff over, but if you are the type of person that can flip back and forth between having TalkBack on, using magnification on the device, or using Zoom, etc., then you may be able to get away with the idiosyncrasies of TalkBack. For example, sometimes I will be on a Facebook page and TalkBack will have trouble reading a certain link. Other times I'll be on a web page and it won't be able to read certain parts of the page, or sometimes it won't be able to read any of it unless I reload the page completely. Other times it will read parts of the page, but not other parts of the page. I find that happens less with VoiceOver on Apple. It does happen from time to time with Apple, but much, much less. On the other hand, a few days after I recorded this section about TalkBack originally, I noticed that there seemed to have been some improvements. The other night I was on Facebook and I turned TalkBack on, purposely trying to stump it, and I actually couldn't. So it seems to me that Google has recently snuck an update into TalkBack where somehow it's just working better. The voice is faster. It just seems like it's working better. I tried the same thing with the website to stump it to see if I could get it not to work with a website. And if memory serves right, there was a section of one site where it still had trouble with, so still a bit of work to be done on the website side of things, but at least with Facebook, which I use like all the time, way more than I probably should be, it's working better. So it seems like even in the progress of me doing this review, there's been some improvement with TalkBack. Another downside to Android is admittedly the learning curve. iOS has a much gentler learning curve than Android. It probably took me, about a week just to even start feeling comfortable with Android, and probably a month to really, truly master it, just because there's so much you can customize, especially if you have a Samsung device. Add Nova Launcher on top of that, and I was having fun. I spent a lot of time with my phone, but I'm a geek, so I don't mind that kind of thing. But if you are less of a geek and you just want stuff to work out of the box, you don't want to fiddle with settings, you don't care about customization, you might want to stick with iOS, but just be prepared to pay a pretty penny. The last issue that I have with Android accessibility that I've experienced so far at least in the last 3 years is the zoom feature. Unlike the zoom in iOS that works flawlessly, the zoom feature in Android, as this screen says right here, will make your phone run slower. It will slow various apps down, such as the calculator, etc. And I found that it also depletes the heck out of your battery, and it also made my Note 4 run hot. And even when I didn't have zoom on, but I had it, let me rephrase that. Even though I had zoom set to on, but I didn't actually have the phone zoomed, it still made my phone run hot and totally depleted the battery. That is not acceptable. So that's a big no-no for the Android camp. That being said, I don't use zoom a whole lot. I probably should. It would probably save my glasses because I'm constantly scratching my glasses with my handheld magnifier. But if I need a bit more magnification, I find it easier just to use a magnifying glass. I find zoom on a small screen rather cumbersome, so I don't use it probably as much as maybe some people might. But again, it's something to be aware of, that if you're going to use zoom, at least on a Samsung device, it does make the device run hot. I would love to try this on another device, such as a Nexus or whatnot, to see if the same effect happens. So I have a friend who's actually got a Nexus. I should get him to play with it and I can report back in a future video. But other than the zoom, the TalkBack idiosyncrasies, and the learning curve, that's really all I can find to complain about with Android. It really is a good and robust and flexible system. Basically, you get a lot of bang for your buck with Android. So that is pretty much it. In summary, if you are totally blind, or you want a phone to just work and you don't want to tweak and customize it, and you have a big chunk of change to spare, go with iOS. If you, on the other hand, have partial vision, can alternate back and forth between voiceover and magnification, using a magnifying glass and so on and so forth, and you like to tweak different settings, and even if you don't like to tweak settings all that much, I have a couple of friends that have defected to Android, and they don't tweak their settings nearly as much as I do. They still prefer Android. And actually, all of my legally blind friends with partial vision who are able to read large print and use a magnifier and so on, pretty much all of us have defected from iOS to Android. Most of us started out using iOS, just like many of you who may be listening to this, and we defected because the price just can't be beat and the customization can't be beat. So if you're willing to work with the learning curve with Android, I absolutely suggest going with Android. In the end, of course, this is all just my opinion as someone who's used both devices, but hopefully these two comparison videos have helped you in deciding what to choose for your next device and which is going to work best for you. In the end, though, of course, it all comes down to personal choice. That's what it's all about, but I bring you these videos just to help you in making that choice. Hey everybody, thanks for sticking around to the end of this video. Here at Circle of the Blind Mice, I bring you these videos because I believe technology enriches the lives of those of us with visual impairments. My mission is to help you learn tech, use tech, and embrace tech. Please like and share this video to help spread the word to your fellow blind mice, and if you're new here, please subscribe for new videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching.